This is a fan reading from the fanfiction Vox Populi by Aelwyn, read by FarenenBlitz. The rating is major. The archive warnings are graphic depictions of violence and major character death. The category is Gen. The fandom Assassin's Creed, all media types. Mentioned relationships are a platonic Desmond Miles and Lucy Stillman. Altair Ibn Ahad and Maria Thorpe, Ezio Auditore da Firenze and Sophia Sator, Radun Hagedon, Connor, and original female characters. The characters are Desmond Miles, Altair Ibn Ahad, Ezio Auditore da Firenze, Edward Kenway, Haytham Kenway, Radun Hagedon, Connor, Clay Kasmarek, Subject 16, Callum Lynch, Sophia Ricken, Sean Hastings, Rebecca Crane, William Miles, mentioned, original assassin characters, Aquilus, also mentioned, Musa, Lynn, Erudito, mentioned, Malik Al-Saif, a mentioned Leonardo da Vinci, a mentioned Adewale, a mentioned Lucy Stillman, and Elijah Miles. Additional tags are The Animus, Watch Dogs, Eagle Vision, Assassin's Creed 2016 the movie, Assassin's Creed the video game, Alternate Universe canon divergence, mild canon divergence but stays as close to established canon as possible, set in the modern storyline during and post 2016 movie events, rated major for violence and Clay's death only. No sex, no smut, mild language, emotional hurt and comfort, Oliver Bowden novelizations referenced, canon compliant through AC Odyssey. Found family, Desmond lives AU, Desmond Miles lives, no beta, we die like Clay Kasmarek. Notes. Disclaimer. All rights belong to Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed and other affiliated entities. This is a fanfiction using copyrighted characters and plot development and is not intended to be used for profit. Ugh. Necessary, unfortunately. Last thing I want is to get sued, being a poor college student and all I have no money to pay for that hullabaloo. Important notice. For the most part, this story will be rated PG-13, or teen if you use the video game scale, due to action violence and potentially sensitive topics. This will never include any adult content. However, some chapters will be rated M because of potential triggers, like major death of a loved one, abuse, and suicide. These M chapters will give a description of why I think they classify, so if you are triggered by any of these topics, you can avoid them. There will not be many, and at the bottom of these chapters I will include an author's note with a PG-13 quick summary of chapter content. If you read the description, then you're probably very curious. If you judge the book by its quite frankly awesome cover, then you probably read the description. Bottom line, you're curious. This is an Assassin's Creed fanfiction that centers around the possibility that Desmond survived December 21st, 2012. It incorporates information pertaining to all games, delves also into content from the books by Oliver Bowden, and takes some content from Patrice Desilets, the creative director of Assassin's Creed 1, Assassin's Creed 2, and partly Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, original storyline involving Desmond before leaving Ubisoft. And also the 2016 movie. I see some people leaving. Don't. I used the movie as a really great plot device to explain Desmond's absence from Black Flag moving forward. In my own opinion, I actually fixed some of the things they messed up and add some background to things they overlooked. I hope to make this a plausible theory that satisfies whilst entertaining the reader. This isn't supposed to be sad. It's supposed to be entirely awesome. And I'm not saying the title is a big plot device, but
Vox Populi is from Latin and means voice of the people. Note: I would like to point out before I start that there will be a certain text spoken in other languages. For the sake of not wanting to have to translate all of it into its respective language and then back to English as a footnote, certain dialogue will have a mention that it is a different language. These different denotations denote a different language from the main spoken one that is being used, but for the sake of author and reader sanity, English will be the written and spoken form. Use your imagination. The Animus translates most everything, after all. Seeing how this is the podfic of a fan fiction, I will have to always mention when it is a different language, even though sometimes I can't be certain which other language is spoken, so I will just mention it is in a different language than English.
The summary. Stay your blade from the flesh of an innocent. Hide in plain sight. Never compromise the Brotherhood. If one were to say back in 2012 that these 3 tenets of the Assassin's Creed were absolute, Desmond would have laughed. With Abstergo around, who was truly innocent? With security cameras at every stoplight, where could one hide? What Brotherhood? All anyone had ever done was betray him. But after escaping an Abstergo Animus project in Madrid in 2016, those 3 tenets are more important than ever. Cut off from the Brotherhood, Desmond must make do with his own team of Animus-trained assassins, and he finally understands. The innocent are blind to the Templar plan. It is possible to hide in a digital world through skill and precision. The Brotherhood are the only family any of them have. They may not be mainstream assassins, but they are assassins all the same. The problem is that they need a leader, and Desmond's the only one with any modern-day experience. But does that make him a mentor? Maybe not, but some pesky ancestral voices inside his head are more than willing to help him figure it out. The assassins are far from beaten, and Desmond Miles lives. Prologue. The recovery team skidded through the tunnel and came to rest at the bottom of an incredibly steep incline. I couldn't believe my eyes. I'd heard of these precursor temples, but I'd never actually been inside one before. The very air seemed to tingle with electric discharge, and I felt the hair stand up on the back of my neck, despite being safely cocooned in a biohazard suit. HQ had said that the electromagnetic blast had originated from this location. It's what had reset the Earth's magnetic field, strengthening it so that Mr. Sunnysun's gigantic solar flare had bounced harmlessly off, instead of frying the planet. Or something. Me? I was a skeptic. It wasn't like I had good reason to be a believer. At least, not yet. Hey, Lucky! Need some help over here? I groaned, but hoisted my gear pack over my shoulder and followed the sound of the voice. I had a name, obviously. And it wasn't Lucky. But I had this ability, shall we say. It allowed me to track objects, people, and I just knew certain things that other people didn't. I would pause for effect, get lucky. I couldn't exactly control it, though, yet it always happened when I needed it. This ability of mine made me nervous. I tried speaking of it to a medical professional provided by the company when I first experienced it, but the almost rabid sense of interest had shut me down from going into any great amount of detail. They'd kept an unusually close eye, for a low-level biotech, that is, on me ever since then. The cavernous base was poorly lit with a soft, almost natural blue light. Almost natural. except for the fact that it was emanating from carved channels in the surface of polished black stone, which no longer existed on the planet, that resembled a network of circuit board wiring. The place had really seen better days, but I was no interior decorator. I was just a lab tech with the gift of finding things that didn't want to be found. Ahead of me were Terry and Jack, standing at the edge of a long stone walkway with the rest of the equipment and peering into the endless abyss below. The other teams had arrived ahead of us and had been documenting, then stripping whatever artifacts they found useful or interesting historically speaking. I ignored them and cruised to a stop near my other team members, ankle twisting painfully on loose chunks of rubble as I did so. "Hey guys," I wheezed, eyes stinging with pain. "Where's Lee?" Terry shrugged, her suit crackling like a plastic shopping bag with the movement. "Inside the chamber already. Higher ups are extremely interested in what was in there, so the excavation team dug us a path. But the chamber's all ours. Wanna head in first?" "But you said I could go first," Jack whined. Sword for Jacqueline, and full of that famed Irish temper that was often just a mythological stereotype. Aside from the fact that she also had flaming red hair and bright green eyes. And that I might have had a crush on her. Badly. "Lee wants him to go through first," Terry countered with a frown. "Wants that special gift of his to track down anything we might be looking for." "It's nothing special, really," I replied a little too quickly with a wince. Jack snorted. "Yeah, right. You found more artifacts than the entire archaeological and exploratory dig teams put together." "Which teams?" There was an incredulous silence. "All of them, genius!" My ears began burning, and I was glad my suit obscured them from view. Lee came out of the opening in the collapsed rock pile, picking her way carefully through like a cat trying not to get its feet wet. As usual, Lilia was the epitome of no-nonsense pragmatism and easy authority that kept the team on track. Yes, I was the only guy, and yes, that made me feel a bit weird. Not because they were girls, but because they were all tomboys and I was of what appeared to them to be the rare breed of man that actually liked wearing knit pullovers and a quiet afternoon with a specialty brew coffee and a rom-com to myself and my cat every now and then. I didn't like getting my hands dirty, and my car of choice was a Prius. Jack, on the other hand, had her hair cut exceptionally short, drove an F-150 that had a lift kit, and drank coffee that resembled motor oil. It was probably half and half. Lee gave me an appraising look. She'd been doing that a lot recently, and I was beginning to feel more than a little put off by it. "Hey, boss," I said uncertainly. "What's up? You told Terry I needed—" "There's so much debris in there that I can't see a thing for the stone dust," she interrupted. "But you can find most anything, so yeah, get in there, Charlie." I always found it ironic that she was the only one who called me by my actual name when she was the one who also praised my lucky powers of observation the most. Okay, I sighed, checking the readout on my device. It told me that it was safe for me to remove my gear. I popped off the head covering and left it at that, at once feeling cool air brush against my skin. It was dusty, yet fresh. And cold. Really cold. I could actually see my breath coming in little puffs of vapor as I carefully edged my way towards the opening in the rubble. My vision faded and darkened abruptly, from normal colors and shades into a pervasive deep indigo. My co-workers a soft and non-threatening shimmering blue. Noise came to me, muted and hard to decipher. It was as if I were blocking out things that weren't important to focus on things that were. It was like trying to hear things underwater. With a lot of creepy whispering when I got close to something that could potentially harm. Oddly, I just knew which direction to go. I could sense it, but couldn't explain how I did. It was as if all my senses combined to form a sixth sense, a secondary sense that was superior to my others separated on their own. I looked down at my shoes and abruptly moved to the side, staring intently at the treadwear of 3 different sets headed towards the entrance. They were pulsing a faint red, fading the farther they got from my position. I knelt to get a better look at them. Each footfall was spaced far from the next, farther than my own, and I had been walking. They'd run from this place. Thinking of all the damage the temple had sustained, I didn't blame them. "What's he doing?" Terry asked. The words were far away, echoing as if from deep within a chasm. "Beats me," Lee replied. "Footprints," I said without any explanation whatsoever. "Sorry?" I didn't know who'd said it. I'd noticed a pair of footprints walking in, shimmering the faintest of golds. They didn't come back out. I'd found my objective. Whatever, or whoever, had made those was important for some reason, though I didn't know why. We were supposed to be recovering an apple of Eden. We found him instead. My vision, mostly deep indigo tones and faint sparks, suddenly exploded with gold. It was so bright it was almost white, and it wasn't shimmering, it was pulsing, like a heartbeat. Slow and getting slower between each pulse, but incredibly strong, if a little thready. "Guys!" I yelped, stumbling and crashing into a pedestal that housed a bright blue orb on it. Despite the fact that the orb was glowing, I couldn't have cared less about its existence. My vision was completely blinded by the brilliant gold light, so bright that I couldn't look directly at it. It was like the sun, and yet my special vision was too stupid to turn itself off. So I just stood there, tiny shards of light piercing my brain, a headache the size of Texas clouding my thoughts and putting pressure on my skull. "Guys!" "Charlie!" Lee, Terry, and Jack came scurrying into the chamber, which was remarkably well intact internally, despite the external damage to it, and probably thought I was having a stroke or something. "Hey, you okay?" I mumbled, wincing at the brightness. I'd never seen anything like it before. I was slowly adjusting to it, but it was still difficult. "Lee, take a look at this," Jack breathed. The pair of them began fawning over the pedestal. I slowly felt my way along the floor towards the light, a high-pitched yip escaping from my lips as my hand was split open by something sharp. The unexpected pain was enough to pull me back into regular vision, and I looked down to see that my fingers were very loosely curled around a wickedly sharp blade. It was fractured off from the housing it belonged to, which was attached to a set of well-maintained leather straps snapped at the bindings. "Lucky?" Terry whispered quietly. I sat back onto my heels and cradled my hand against my chest with an exhale of breath, the pristine white front of my biohazard suit slowly being stained by blood as it oozed from my palm. The knife had cut through my glove like it was made of weak fabric. "I'm gonna need a med kit. Other than that, I'm fine." Terry didn't look convinced. "You're sure?" "Yep." She nodded, then turned her attention to the source of the golden light. Bending down on her heels, she suddenly became very, very interested. "Whoa! Look at his hand!" I blinked away the tears welling in the corners of my eyes and suddenly realized what she was talking about, also incredibly interested, but for an entirely different reason.
The body before us was positioned on the stone floor, as if he'd been blasted backward from the pedestal. And judging by the substantial damage to his right hand, that was probably what had happened. The damage was so bad that his skin had been burned black, with deep red lines resembling both lightning and circuitry at the same exact time. Furthermore, this was Desmond freaking Miles, the guy who'd shredded more than 7 years of careful planning on the part of the Abstergo execs in less than 3 months and was responsible for the death of Warren Vidic. But what interested me most was that he was still glowing faintly with that golden pulse, and that it was the brightest on the upper left side of his chest. Looking down at him, I had the strangest feeling that he was the answer to my deepest questions about my gift, wherever I'd gotten it from, why I had it, what it signified about me. My friends were anxious to get started. I'd usually wait until we got back to the lab to do this, but I don't like the look of that hand, Lee stated. Prep him for autopsy. Wait, what? I exclaimed, startled. You can't! Why not? She was frowning. Because he's still alive! You're dreaming, Jack scoffed. And besides, how would you even know? I can sense his heartbeat, I retorted before I thought it through. The moment the words were out of my mouth, I regretted saying them. You could have heard a pin drop in that chamber, or rather, a few drops of my blood splashing onto the floor. I could feel Lee's gaze boring into the side of my head, but it never occurred to me for even a second to take my eyes off of Desmond's pulse, a golden haze emanating from his heart. Check him, Lee instructed after an uncomfortably long period of silence. She sounded like her throat was dry. Jack did so hesitantly, fingers pressed against his neck. She looked back up, startled, and a little creeped out. He's right, she whispered. I just stood there, wishing I were somewhere else. I don't know how, but... Prep for autopsy, Lee interrupted quickly. Set up the camera. We'll go through the motions, extract blood and harmless tissue samples. She glanced at the hand. Should be able to get some marrow samples with that mass, but this is important. To all intents and purposes, this man is dead, okay? He's got some very skilled friends who won't stop until they've got him back if they were to know he'd survive. When you're done, stabilize him for transport, and we'll get him to the facility in Madrid. Get to it. She grabbed my arm and inspected my hand closely. Not you, Charlie. That's going to need stitches. She sighed, leading me out of the cavern and toward the supply station. Come on. It'll be over in a few moments. But Fine, okay. Lee whistled lightly as she peeled off what remained of my glove and sprayed the gash down with antibacterial spray. I winced. She arched an eyebrow and began feeling a needle with a numbing agent so that I wouldn't feel it while she stitched me up. So there was a long period of silence. Eagle vision. That's your special gift. I'm going to be honest. I'd hoped that you'd just be a good finder. Eagle vision, I echoed. What's that? Lee didn't look up from what she was doing. I slipped back into my, apparently, eagle vision, unexpectedly, and was surprised to see her glowing red. Danger. It's a gift. A sense, if you will. One that only the assassins know how to use. She injected the needle into my arm, and I winced again. You're a great addition to my team, Charlie. I'm really sorry that it's come to this. Come to what? I was beginning to feel numb. Lee began stitching up my hand. She finished her work, not saying a word.
The numbness spread to other parts of my body. "It truly is unfortunate that you've got assassins in your family tree," she sighed. "I hate to lose good people." The last thing I saw was her scarlet form in a sea of swirling indigo before I blacked out, never to be seen by my friends and family ever again.